Capcom, a company synonymous with quality games going all the way back to their run of amazing games on the NES. And I'm a little bit too young for the NES, so my personal history with equating Capcom with good games goes back to the absolute classic Street Fighter 2. My first ever games console was a SNES, and my brother would beat the hell out of me over and over again on Street Fighter and just about any fighting game.
God damn it, Scott!
Except Tekken, I got him there. Take that, Poundland Andrew Tate.
You're a beta male, Sonic.
Capcom would later in the PS1 era go on to be known for their absolutely amazing line of Resident Evil games revolutionising the survival horror genre. And while that was going on, they were also still on top of their game and at the very forefront of fighting games with stuff like Marvel vs. Capcom, which in the gaming landscape pretty much cemented them as a behemoth of the industry for time immemorial. But over the years, the company has certainly taken on some weird and quirky projects that I appreciate as a fan of strange media. Stuff like Beautiful Joe, God Hand, Killer 7, and even Ace Attorney to some extent are some of the most esoteric things I've ever played. And I'll probably cover all of them someday. However, all of these games pale in comparison to the game we're going to be talking about today, Gregory Horror Show. I've literally been looking for any excuse to cover this game for my whole time on YouTube going back to my old channel. And I'm very excited to finally make this video. Goblin, you can finally cover Gregory Horror Show! In the late 90s and early 2000s, a new form of animation was taking the world by storm, and this animation was CGI animation. It seemed like in children's animation, because of the success of Toy Story, you couldn't escape this stuff, which would later destroy regular animation and lead to the endless soulless live-action Disney remakes. I remember watching shows like Reboot and Butt Ugly Martians growing up that were awful looking in retrospect. But this trend was not only infecting the West because Japan would start getting into the act too. And in 1999, the weirdest show I've ever seen, Gregory Horror Show, was released upon the world in all its CGI goodness. The show was in a very strange format, with it basically being a string of small trippy 2-minute vignettes. It revolves around a faceless guest who is trapped in a magical hotel by an evil rat who's trying to mentally break him. All the different characters have such great designs, and they're either anthropomorphic animals or objects. The art style is really awesome and has that kind of cubecraft looking thing, and it may look cute, but this show is really disturbing in many ways. I'm not even sure who this show is meant to be aimed at because the style would imply it's for children. But the content, I think, is a little bit too much for children. I mean, it has the themes of death, depression, and a pink lizard that is aroused by taking blood.
So, do you see this great, big, lovely needle?
I still want to have sex with it.
The show has such an unsettling atmosphere to it, and the art style being so cutesy really makes it more horrifying in my opinion. The show is really unique, and I would honestly like to do a video about it and its themes one day. So yeah, the game we're going to be talking about today is technically a licensed game, and it might be the best licensed game of all time. Of course, I didn't know this game was licensed when I played it back in the day, I just thought it looked a bit wild. This game, in my head, will always be associated with a relic of the past, renting video games. This might be hard to believe for younger people, but us olds used to go down to Blockbuster and rent our video games. And near my home as a kid, there used to be a petrol station that used to rent video games out, and one day on the shelf I saw this game and gave it a rent. Me and my childhood friend Tom would play this game together a lot and rented it for many weeks in a row. Until one day I went in there to rent some games and I saw that they were selling all of their stock, and I managed to buy Gregory Horror Show for practically nothing. And that copy of the game is still the one I have to this very day, and it's actually one of the only games I still have from my childhood, and I'll always treasure it. And so that's my TED Talk about being an old man.
The world is changing, but the Shire will always remain the same.
Gregory Horror Show, the game takes the themes, the setting, and the characters of the show and really does its own thing with it. And I think that's what makes this one of the best licensed games ever, because it stays true to the show while expanding on it somewhat. Gregory Horror Show, the game, starts with a voiceover telling us how the person we're playing as ended up in this horrible hotel. And that's one thing I love about this game, the voice acting is incredible in a perfect sort of cheesy way. We see Gregory, the rat man and owner of this hotel we're going to be stuck in for quite a while. This place would literally give Guesthouse Paradiso a run for its money.
Can I ask where your eggs come from?
Hens' vaginas.
After our character settles into his charming room, he falls into a deep sleep, and standing before him he sees Death. As you do. And you might notice that Death is wearing a Sweden hat, which I always thought was a bit weird. But when I was watching the Gregory Horror Show TV series for this video, I saw a comment saying that him wearing this hat was a reference to a Swedish movie called The Seventh Seal, which is a classic piece of Swedish cinema in which a medieval knight plays the personification of death in a game of chess. Which would make sense to me and is maybe a hint to the themes of this game, which we will get into later. We're gonna go deep in this video. This theory was in a YouTube comment section, so you know that means it's 100% true because everything in there is correct all of the time. But the fact that he talks like an angry New Yorker is literally the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Come on now, throw away all them worries. Forget about them.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
And basically Death, with a New York minute to spare, offers you a deal. If you can collect all the lost souls in the hotel, he will help you escape. This is the first big place in which the video game takes a departure from the TV show because there's no soul collecting element in the show. It's just a series about a guy trying to escape from a weird supernatural situation that he finds himself in. Death doesn't even actually show up in the TV series until the second to last episode, and he doesn't have a New York accent. Unbased. With our goal assured, Death loans us a child body to do our soul capturing in because presumably we're just a wandering soul. Then the game finally begins in our character's room where we hear some horrifying screams coming from the room next to us. And as is tradition in any horror movie or video game, we of course go to investigate. It goes so well every time. This is where we basically meet our only friend in this horrible place, a Neko zombie who tells us to go steal a key from the lobby so we can talk to him. So we go and ask Gregory if we can have the key, and he tells us about someone, definitely not him, who sewed up Neko zombie's mouth, eyes and ears. Damn, that's messed up.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
After lecturing us about how evil the cat is and how we can't have the key, he just buggers off, leaving the key in plain sight. Yoink. We then finally come face to face with Neko Zombie for the first time, and even though this game has this cutesy art style, it's still kind of horrifying what they did to this poor cat. Neko Zombie is another big part of this game where it departs from the show because he's not really in the show that much. I mean, in one episode he actually comes in and stops the main character from using his incredibly old cell phone to phone home. But here he's like our tutorial boffin who helps us through the game, and I can't help but love him. You just want to give him a hug because he has such an adorable voice and he's a bit of a sad boy. I mean, I would be too if I had every single orifice sewed shut. I'm pretty sure the person voicing them here is different from the show, but they do such a good job at making him endearing.
My name is Neko Zombie. Do you think I'm scary?
Neko then gives us the scoop on how we're going to be stealing all the souls of the other guests in the hotel. Basically, we have to find that person's weak point so they drop the soul they are holding by spying on them and getting clues from other guests. After imparting this knowledge, Neko Zombie kindly gives us his soul because he doesn't care about it. Let me help you, you poor kitty. We go back to our room and go to sleep and hand over our first soul to Death. Then the game presents us with the lizard woman who's turned on by blood, Catherine. And this is kind of the first proper tutorial soul that shows you how soul stealing actually works. In this case, you're given a big clue by this cutscene that shows Gregory's grandson James leaving a banana peel on the floor. This is obviously telling you that you need to find a banana peel and trip up Catherine to get her soul. So you have to go to the kitchen and fish a banana peel out of the garbage and leave it on the floor for Catherine to chip on, and then bam, another soul. Most of the other souls you have to collect won't be that simple obviously, and you'll have to do a lot of spying on people to figure out what you need to do. It really feels like a 90s point and click game with all the moon logic-y things it expects you to do at times. Once you have Catherine's soul delivered to the Reaper, you have one more tutorial type soul to collect before the game lets go of your hand. The next soul you have to get is the soul of Judgment Boy, who is quite possibly the best character in this game, and I absolutely love him. He is so special.
Judgment! Do you know my name? Judgment!
Are you retarded?
This character is another one that I think has a different voice actor, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they just changed their delivery. But much like Neko Zombie, I think the voice actor here does a much better job. This made me very sad when I finally watched the TV series because Judgment Boy's song is completely different and it's nowhere near as good as the game one.
Do you know who I am? I am Judgment Boy. Judgment. Disappointed!
In this last kind of tutorial soul, you get Judgment Boy's soul by finding a adult magazine in Catherine's room. Then you have to give the adult mag to Gregory, who runs off to do some research with it in the storage room, if you catch my Tokyo drift. Giving him this somehow makes a self-help book show up in the library, then you show this to Judgment Boy and bam, the last soul of the tutorial section. I did tell you this game has moon logic. With Judgment Boy's soul, we have completed the tutorial night and the game starts properly. Every time you clear 3 souls, that night of the game is completed and you can move on to the next set of souls. At the end of each new night, you get an intro sequence that shows you all the characters that you're going to be going after this night. Every time you clear a night, a new part of the hotel will usually open up as well, so it's kinda like a Metroidvania in that sense. The hotel is so cool looking and it's a joy to explore. My personal favourite area is the basement area. It's just so creepy. You can never feel relaxed in this game because you have a health meter that's constantly draining away as you're trying to figure out how to steal the souls. So you have to be quick about it and learn where all the health restoring items are to keep you alive. And because this is a Capcom game, you of course have to use different herbs to heal yourself like in Resident Evil. But time isn't the only thing trying to eat away at your health, because the guests won't just lay down and let you take their souls. If you haven't yet stole a person's soul, they will just run whenever they see you, but if you've taken their soul already, they will try and kill you. If they see you walking near them, they all start chasing you, and it's honestly one of the most terrifying things ever. As soon as the chase music starts, I literally cack in my pants every time. It makes me feel so uneasy. And as you can imagine, near the end of the game, the hotel gets very crowded with people that want to kill you. And just walking around trying to get on with your soul reaping business can be a very hard thing to do. I can't count the amount of times I've started with one person chasing me only to have the whole building coming after me. Real horror games with blood and gore can't get a reaction out of me, but a cutesy horror game can with psychology. I love that all the other stuff makes it feel like you're on constant edge, so you kind of feel like how your character must be feeling in this situation. It's an absolute masterclass in game design because this game is so effective at getting emotions out of me. And the worst part is, if you get caught, a horror show starts where you see your character being brutally murdered by who caught you. Horror shows. Like the title of the game, isn't it? Some of these are legitimately brutal, like Catherine, who of course stabs you up and takes a ludicrous amount of blood. Or my personal favourite Cactus Gunman, who just literally shoots you with a gun.
Does this ever happen to you?
So a lot of the time when you're trying to get a soul, you have to use the map to plan your route and make sure you don't get caught by all the various guests. Every guest has their own schedule, so you have to learn their routes to help you avoid them or catch their souls, as the case may be. I love that about this game, it just makes the whole thing feel alive with you seeing people move on different floors above you and whatnot. I don't know why it just gives me flashbacks to Majora's Mask and the way you had to catch certain people at certain times in that game. Because this game plays with time a lot like that game, with there being a clock that determines where all the characters will be. This stuff plays into catching certain people's souls because you will need them to be in a certain place at a certain time to nab them. You can raise your health by finding all the books laying around a hotel and taking them back to your room to read. This is basically the only thing you can do to prolong the amount of time you get to adventure around stealing souls. The sound design in this game is so great because you'll be hearing doors open and footsteps coming towards you, and it gives you mini heart attacks every time.
Don't sneak up on me like that!
Although I absolutely love this game and the way it does things, sometimes the stuff you have to do to get a soul can be a bit too precise for its own good. Like one of my least favourite souls to get, the Hell's Chef, who is incidentally the soul me and my friend never got past when we played this game as kids. We have to go and drop items into his broth in the kitchen until he goes mental and decides to chase you down. And after he starts chasing you, you have to lure him into the storeroom because there's a draft there that puts out his flame, thus netting you the soul. Logic. Obviously, after you do a lot of spying on people, you will get hints that will lead you to this conclusion, but as a kid, and now in many respects, I'm dumb as a bag of rocks, so it doesn't matter. But the most annoying part of this whole game for me is one of the last souls, Angel Dog, who has a similar convoluted weak point. Angel Dog wants to watch a football match at a certain time in the evening in a shared room at the hotel. And for whatever reason, Gregory doesn't want her to do this, so you have to find a way to stop Gregory from bothering her. Which means you have to distract Gregory with the adult magazine from earlier. And you have to do this just at the right time so Angel Dog can watch the football. And it took me ages to realise that the adult mag was the solution to this because I honestly completely forgot about it. This game can't be intended for children, surely.
I love the way that's right next to the map. If you're just a child buying a map.
Why would children
like,
buy a map?
Mummy, what's this?
But the problem is, it's so late in the game that the hotel is absolutely swarming with people out for your blood. And the time at which you have to give the jazz mag to Gregory, he's right next to the Hell Chef, and when you fail, you have to wait a whole day to try again, and it's maddening. But once you finally pull it off, you legitimately feel like some sort of James Bond super spy. Now, usually when I cover a game on this channel, I don't like to go through all the content of the game and ruin it, because half the reason I make these videos is to show you amazing games that I think you should play. But in this particular instance, I really want to talk about the ending to this game and theorise about what it means. The ending to this game was quite frankly amazing and stuck with me long after I finished it. So if you liked what you heard me say about this game, go play it yourself and then come back and talk to me about the ending. Anyway, let's get metaphysical and artsy now.
That I love. I absolutely love.
So I haven't really talked about the underlying themes of this game yet because I wanted to save it all for the end here. The first time I played this game as a kid, on the surface level, I thought maybe this game was about a lost soul that's trying to get out of limbo. Which is kind of right. Even right at the beginning of the game, Gregory hints at what might be going on.
Perhaps you've somehow managed to lose your way. Or maybe you've just lost your mind.
But nothing is really spelled out to you until we move into the end portion of the game where stuff starts to get really dark. Well, darker. After you collect all the souls, Death says he will help you escape the hotel now. And when you try to leave, you're stopped by Gregory's mum, who is teased throughout the whole game as the big bad who is keeping all these souls trapped for her own amusement. She knocks you out before you can escape and puts you in a cell, then Neko Zombie appears to give us a pep talk to get out of here once and for all. Once we head to the door again, we have to do some sort of boss battle where we have to make sure Gregory's mama hits the door until it breaks. Now this is where the darkness begins. As you're trying to walk towards the light to escape, Gregory turns into a ghost and starts sapping away your energy. He tries to get us to stay by telling us that we don't really want to return to the cruel reality because that's why we came here in the first place. As we finally enter the light, he says he'll keep our room ready for our return, which will become important in a minute. And then the New Yorker Def wants to send us back, but our character decides to go back because he wants to save Neko Zombie. Neko Zombie, being the usual sad boy, doesn't want to be saved, but we give him a red bandana for one of his wounds. He then puts the bandana on and goes up to finally get revenge on Gregory and his mama with fire. He sets fire to the whole building, killing everyone inside in an honestly really brutal way. And before Neko Zombie dies, he says these telling words.
This world is a reflection of the weakness in your heart. Whether you return to reality or not is up to you.
So you might be thinking that's a happy ending, but it isn't over yet because this bit is the bit that sticks with me. We basically get told in a credit sequence monologue that the hotel was all of our main character's creation, and then he says,
I know I will find my way back to that hotel again. And when that time comes, I might never return to the real world.
We then see Gregory in the hotel being reborn, with Gregory greeting us for our stay again.
I knew you'd be coming back. Eventually everyone comes back to Gregory House.
I love it. It's like a weird art house piece or something. It really gets you thinking. So what the hell is going on? Time to present you with my theory of what's going on in this game. Watching through the anime actually kind of reinforced that my theory is actually quite accurate, but I have a couple things I want to add that aren't spelled out. What I initially thought was our main character is some depressed, lonely, overworked salaryman with no friends who's retreated into a fantasy world. And this whole world is this character trying to bring himself to live and not to end himself. Which in my interpretation makes the ending even more chilling. Japan has a big culture of these salarymen who are just people that work all day at an office and then go back to their tiny shoebox apartments. And I thought maybe our character was one of these people, but it turns out I was half right, because the anime reveals a bit more about our character. In the show, there's an episode that introduces TV Fish, and he shows our character's child. Which confirms that our character has a family. So my theory that he was a loner is wrong, but he is an overworked salaryman who hates his life. In the ending of the TV show, we actually get to see our character back in reality with his family, and he's not having a good time. He sees the marching of his fellow salaryman and he can't take it anymore, and bam, he's back in Gregory House again. And you know what that means? I actually way prefer the way the game does the ending because it doesn't tell you as much, which makes it more intriguing. And Neko Zombie isn't really involved as much as he is in the game, and that sucks because he's such a good boy. So this world is clearly our character trying to deal with his own demons in his own head. I think all the guests and different characters in the hotel represent people in his life because they're not all hostile, some of them want to help him. And I think Gregory represents his negativity and paranoia that just wants him to give up and stop trying, and Neko Zombie represents his beaten down sense of self. The fact that Neko Zombie is chained up in a jail clearly represents the fact that our character feels trapped in his life with no way out. And the whole scene where we give Neko Zombie the red bandana is clearly him giving himself the strength to get out of the quagmire he finds himself in, which obviously ends up being in vain. It reminds me of this episode of Red Dwarf where two elements of the main character's psyche become manifest. This is compounded to me by the stuff that Gregory says at the end when he's telling you how our character truly feels deep down, and he knows he's right because it's him. The TV show actually has an episode that almost spells that out, where the character looks in the mirror of truth and what he sees is...
Here is the form of your true self. What did I tell you? You should have said no, right?
So all of this means the ending of this game is our character accepting death because he feels like reality is too much to deal with. I think this might be the most serious I've ever got in one of my videos. As someone that's had his own struggles with mental health, this story just really hits home with me. The whole game is an allegory for someone battling with their mental health, and it's crazy the depth that's in this innocent looking game that looks like a baby's first horror game. And I think that's why I love this game so much. It has so much going for it, and it truly is a piece of insane outsider-styled art. And maybe you can see why I love it so much and why I wanted to make this video, because I'm very passionate about this game. Anyway, I've been a Goblin, and thank you for watching. If you would like to get all my videos months early and to get your name in the credits, consider supporting me on Patreon like all these awesome people have. Links in the description.